China is threatening countermeasures against the United States. Karine Jean-Pierre got asked a question about this. The reporter said, you know, you in the administration keep talking a lot about violation of airspace. You keep saying this phrase over and over and over again. And so we have questions about the response from you and from China. Is this escalating? And are there going to be additional actions from your White House to China, or conversely, from China against the United States? Because China, according to an Asian American news website, is escalating. But before we read the article, let's see the question that Karine Jean-Pierre got when she was out in the press briefing room today.
This, because we heard a lot of top officials say clearly this was a violation of the U.S. sovereign airspace.
And you've heard us say this from here, too. It was a violation of U.S. airspace, and we have been very clear with our communications with China. That has not changed. You saw how Secretary Blinken postponed his trip to China because of their irresponsible behavior. I don't have a trip to announce from here or when that trip is going to continue. That is something that the secretary is going to decide with the president. But again, we have been very clear. What China did was irresponsible. It was irresponsible actions.
Okay.
What level of expectation that Secretary Blinken will meet with his Chinese counterpart in Munich?
I'm not going to get ahead of that. Like I said, the lines of communication has continued to be open, and we will continue to have those discussions. And again, and as I mentioned moments ago, you're going to hear from the president. He's going to speak very decisively.
And he did. The president came out, told us he's got a 4-part plan that was launching rules, regulation. We have taking inventory of the flying balloons and so on. But Karine also said, we also canceled their trip. Biden said, we shot that thing out of the sky. We sent them a hard message. And we know that Karine also called them irresponsible. They said your spy balloon was an irresponsible thing to do. But China is saying, well, we're going to do some things ourselves. We're not just going to stand here. And they have apparently started taking action. This comes out from a news website called nextshark.com, which apparently focuses on Asia and that part of the world, China and that region. And this article was drafted by Carl Sampson, February 16th. And here's what he says. China threatens countermeasures, his language, countermeasures against the U.S. entities over downing of the spy balloon. And we're all sitting here going, well, what's that going to be? We were waiting for the president to tell us, were these even Chinese objects, or were these Timmy's objects, or what's the deal? And so we now know that this is escalating, it appears. It is unclear exactly what Beijing is saying their countermeasures are and which entities will be impacted, but we have new details. According to NextShark, they tell us, China has threatened to enact countermeasures against U.S. entities involved in the downing of its wandering spy balloon. They're telling us that this could further cripple delicate relationships between global superpowers. Now, where did this come from? A foreign ministry spokesperson over from China named Wang Wenbin delivered a briefing on Wednesday. He said the following: China, quote, firmly opposes the U.S. action and will take countermeasures in accordance with the law against the relevant U.S. entities that undermine China's sovereignty and security. He added that Beijing will resolutely safeguard national sovereignty and its legitimate rights and interests, whatever those are, which apparently means the right to fly their trash balloons over our skies. In what appears to be an unrelated move, the Chinese Commerce Ministry on Thursday sanctioned U.S. defense contractors Lockheed Martin and Raytheon over arms sales to Taiwan. You see how this is getting spicy? Last week, the U.S. sanctioned 6 Chinese aerospace companies for their ties to the PLA. According to the Commerce Department, the entities were involved in the China military aerospace programs, including airships and other related materials and components. They also said it was a part of a years-long global surveillance program. Washington Post reported that the U.S. had actually tracked the balloon since it lifted off from China's Hainan province. Right? So the U.S. was following it from the moment it took off, and they let it fly all through the U.S. Why is that? Why, oh, why is that? They probably knew that it was coming, right? If they watched it lift off, they were probably following it the entire time. On Wednesday, an anonymous official told Reuters the object was originally set to reach Guam and Hawaii, but it was blown off course by strong winds. This is the fake explanation from China, right? This is what our military says is not believable at all. They said, well, actually, we don't know on this point yet. Karine's going to answer a question about this. But they say it wasn't just a weather balloon set to go, float around these regions. It was actually a spy balloon, and it was spying specifically. The assessment echoed China's claim that the balloon had gone astray. Still, Beijing insists it was a civilian airship used for weather research and not a spy craft. So a lot of concerns. Japan's raising some issues as well, and China is getting a little bit vocal in their threats, in their response. And so Karine got asked about this. All right, Karine, if they're threatening you, if they're threatening the White House and American companies now as a result of this, what's the White House doing to fight back? Are they standing up to the Chinese and saying, hey guys, you flew your balloon over us first. We're just responding to your act of aggression.
Foreign policy topic, China yesterday warned or threatened, of countermeasures against U.S. entities in response to the shoot-down of their spy balloon. Today they sanctioned 2 U.S. defense contractors. Is there any response there, and what does this mean for the bilateral relationship?
So the way that we see that there's the sanctions that you just mentioned is that these are symbolic and measures and unnecessary. That's how we view them. And look, China can speak to their own actions, but again, we see them as symbolic and unnecessary. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks, Karine.
Very short line of questioning there. Symbolic, not really worth even investigating, just sanctions, and it's not going to escalate from there. Now, some time ago, we had a theory that maybe the the 3 objects that they shot down after the fact were Chinese, but they didn't want to confirm that, right? Both sides were, in other words, the theory was both sides were shooting down each other's spy balloons or objects, and neither side wanted to claim that they were their objects, because if they did, then it sort of now becomes a shooting war between 2 global superpowers. Turns out that wasn't true at all. It was just the U.S. military blowing out Timmy's science project, which, not ideal for little Timmy. But it's not China. The first one certainly was, but all the sanctions and all of that, right? We don't want to escalate this anymore. Maybe it was an errant balloon, maybe it wasn't, but we're done. Sanctions are symbolic. Things are going to get back on track, and we're all going to just laugh about this next Christmas. So here the question comes, well, the Chinese in the article that we just read, they said that this just flew off course. They say it was a civilian airship. It was just a weather balloon, and it was supposed to go visit Guam and Hawaii. Karine, what do you guys say at the White House to that?
And has the intelligence community now concluded that it likely began heading east but veered off course, and that's why it ended up traversing the United States?
So look, I want to be really mindful here, because I've heard this before. I don't have any specifics to share on that. You're talking about the Hawaii and the Guam piece to this. So I just want to be super careful
we just
there.
read that one.
And I would probably refer you to the Pentagon. And what we think that they are doing is they are deflecting. They're coming up with excuses and trying to spin this.
That sounds right.
And at the end of the day, their surveillance balloon was indeed in our airspace, and they said it was, as you all know, they said it was a potential weather balloon, which it was not, and so it's been very clear. All of the American people, the entire world saw what China did, and it was irresponsible.
Chinese officials were initially not very responsive. For example, when the Secretary of Defense tried to get a hold of them, are they being more responsive now?
So I'll say this: our approach with China is,
For example, when
it was irresponsible.
Chinese officials were.
That's Karine. Obviously, some interesting questions. I think she's right about that. It really doesn't matter, in my opinion, whether this was, it was an unmanned civilian weather balloon, or it was a legitimate spy balloon. Doesn't matter. I don't really care what it is. It's from China. We don't know what it is. Therefore, it's got to go. It's got to go down. Chinese can have a million different reasons. It could have been, this carrying that, whatever. It's nice. It's not supposed to be here. So it's got to go. Sorry. Doesn't matter what the explanation is. It's got to go. And so they're staying true to that, which I think is the right call. Of course, what else are they going to do? But a big question we've had for a long time is, are they going to recover anything? Previously this week, we've heard from General Milley. We've heard from John Kirby. A lot of different officials have said, well, these things are kind of in difficult areas. They're kind of like in the bottom of Lake Huron. They're outside very remote areas in Alaska. we don't really want to go out there and get them. And so it's going to take a while, and it's probably unlikely that we'll get anything anyways. So the media wants to know, all right, well, have you recovered anything, Karine? You've been saying you're going to go dig this stuff up. Where is it?
Give an update on efforts to recover debris from the 3 unidentified floating objects.
So as we have mentioned before, because of the weather condition, it has been very difficult to get the debris. And so we are, allowing the Pentagon and the Department of Defense to do their work in trying to bring the debris that is clearly in the water to the ground, and so we just don't have much to share there. But what I can say is, when I've been asked what are they exactly, well, we can't definitively say without analyzing the debris what these objects were.
Science
so far,
projects.
we haven't seen any indication of anything that points specifically to the idea that
Hobby
these
balloons.
3 objects were part of the PRC surveillance program, or that they were definitively involved in external intelligence collection efforts against the United States. We can also rule out that they were operated by the U.S. government. Right now, the intelligence community is considering, and I've said this before, you've heard my colleagues from NSC say this before as well, is that they could be tied to commercial or research entities and benign. Efforts are actively underway at all sites to find what is left of these objects so that we can better understand them. The president has directed his team to make sure that we're briefing Congress on a regular basis, as you have seen us do the last 2 days. But again, because of the weather, because it is February and it has been very difficult to get the debris from the objects, it has taken us some time.
Yeah, it's cold, man. It's cold, and it's at the bottom of the ocean, and nobody wants to go out in the bottom of the ocean, especially when it's cold out. So we'll see if we get anything. We've long sort of joked that they'll just slow roll this thing. They really don't want to come back to us and say, oh yeah, here it is. And it says, Timmy, 4th grade, February 12th, 2023. It was supposed to be a memento, but it got blown to smithereens. They don't want to drag that out ashore and have John Kirby say that to the press. He looked like an idiot. So they're going to avoid it. I don't know that we'll ever see anything. Of course, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for joining us. Actually, we may not, the balloon thing might be over, but there will be more nonsense out of the White House. So we'll continue to cover that nonsense. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching it. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.